Hello, everybody. Welcome to see you all here. We have an exciting event happening in Albion with that land coming up for sale, and possibly we could end up in the hands of some land trust or something that would make it accessible to thousands of people. The millions who come to the coast. So that's the subject tonight. Will be what we want to do and think about the Albion Headlands south of the Navarro River and the bridge, 84 acres. And we're going to hear from the realtor, Justin Nagone here. And also tonight from Rick Sanborn, who's been active on that for decades. And two people from the Mendocino Land Trust, Conrad Kramer and Emily Griffin, right? Okay, we're going to start off the meeting with Rick Sanwarin, who has been involved, like I said, for, 20, 25 years with already efforts to try to keep that land from being subdivided and developed. And so let's have Rick San tell us a little bit about that land and these past efforts.
Thanks. So when we look at the Albion Headlands, the South Headlands this is that we're talking about right now, we have to look at it in the bigger context of the fact that the Albion River Bridge is a registered historic monument in the United States, that the wild and scenic rivers includes the Albion River for some miles upstream, and that we have a port of Albion, which is the second most important port in Mendocino County. In terms of the actual headlands, the past efforts, beginning in about the 1980s, the Smith family bought that in 1987. In 1988, they moved to rezone it. It's now zoned 40-acre minimums for rural remote residential, I think it is called. RMR. Wanted to rezone it to 20 acres. And that went through a very complex process with both the board supervisors, the Coastal Planning Administration, et cetera, and the California Coastal Commission. Well, the Coastal Commission said, okay, 20 acres, go ahead and do it. Well, it came back to the board supervisors here in Mendocino, and the board said, well, I'm not so sure, because we had a planning process in 1985 that designated it as 40-acre minimums to protect the environmental and scenic resources, the highly scenic designation on that property. So that went around and around, and the Board of Supervisors eventually denied it. It was contested to the Supreme Court in California, and the Supreme Court said that the board has the right to do that. So it stayed at 40 acres. Then in 1998, the owners again applied for boundary line adjustment. In the background here, we should mention that there are 16 little teeny lots, 75 feet square-ish, rectangular, that were divided, that were surveyed and noted on the maps back in I think it was 06, but maybe it was 1920s. Oh wait. 1908. Okay. Long time ago. Well, that's gone through a process of deciding whether those initial parcels were actually buildable. And it's one of the common ways to try to build on teeny little parcels is to reconfigure them to be larger parcels, less parcels but larger, but carving it out of the bigger parcels. And so that went around in 1998 and went around and around and around. It wasn't until 2008 that it got back to the Board of Supervisors having to make a decision on would they allow this reconfiguration. And after at that time, the Albion Residents Association was formed to say we want to keep it at the 40-acre minimums. So it went to the Board of Supervisors again. There was very big discussion at that time, and the Board of Supervisors eventually voted to keep it at 40 acres. They did not allow the boundary line adjustment, partially because they found it, quote, inconsistent with coastal access policies and environmental standards. So that was when it sort of got quiet, got very quiet for a while. While the group that started out as the Albion Residents Association went through 2 more efforts to try to get it purchased for the public good. The first one was the Albion State Park. And some of you were probably even part of this effort when we had a group of people that came down to the Headlands and had a picture taken. Well, many people, probably 50 or 60, and presented this to the state parks. The one state parks bought. Well, they didn't have any money and they weren't able to buy it at the time. And then in 2000, the Trust for Public Land took an interest. And they put together a proposal to buy several parcels along the coastline, including the Casper Headlands, Albion Headlands, in addition to the Botanical Gardens, and part of the Westport, and the Barrow. Some of those were purchased and were turned over either to nonprofits or to the state, but Albion was not. Albion was the one that is not, and is the only town along the coast that doesn't have any public land. So that's why we're still on it. We're still trying to make sure that we have an opportunity now and to try. And also part of the reason why the boundary line adjustment was not approved is because of environmental questions. Not only is it scenic, but there are environmentally sensitive areas, including the endangered pygmy cypress trees. There are several of them on the property. And the freshwater spring and marsh, which is fairly rare. So at that time, 2008, the Board of Supervisors denied that BLA, and it has been in sort of a hiatus since then. Well, now the owners have agreed to have it be listed as for sale with Mr. Trudeau's organization, and so they're going forward on trying to find a buyer. The Mendocino Land Trust has come in to say we will like to be considered as the buyer, and here's what we can do, and they'll have time to let you know what that is. But we have to look at this too, that there are 2 or 3 other things going on at the same time in Albion. This is a very important time for Albion. There's the effort on the restoration of the bridge, the Albion River Bridge, which, as I said, is a historical monument. The replacement of the Salmon Creek Bridge, which is coming up, and the ongoing effort to open up the public access in the Albion Flats. So tonight's effort, of course, is directed towards saving the Albion Headlands. So we'll be talking about that, and there'll be time for questions. A few questions as we go along, and a lot of questions at the end. So that's my part of it. You want to put it on?
It's time for a few questions of Rick Sam, if anyone has any, about this background history before we have Justin talk about the current situation. Any questions for? Yes.
What you referred to the Albion Flats. Can you say a little bit more about what property that is?
Well, down in the port of Albion, there is all the flat part is owned by one person, and that is under consideration for as a construction site for the bridge restoration.
Okay.
And also for and some of us, myself as really prominent, advocating for public access, place to park down there, to put boats in, and to get down to the coast.
The south side of the river.
It's a campground.
It's a campground.
The north side.
The north side of the river.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a big campground.
Any other questions for Roxanne? Okay, pass the mic over to
Okay.
Justin.
Okay, that was very nicely done. Nice historical background on the property, and I pretty much agree with all that. So my name is Justin Nadeau. I'm with Mendo Sotheby's, Mendo Realty. We've been doing business here for 62 years, so locally owned and operated. Probably many of you have worked with Mendo Realty or Mendo Sotheby's in the past. When I first met Carol, the owner of the property, the seller, and we talked about it, I felt it was a big honor to be able to be a local person, to be able to step up and represent this property, because we want local people having say and being part in the big decisions that are made up and down the coast. That doesn't happen if these types of opportunities go to out of town consulting firms or brokerages or things like that. So I've seen that as a positive. I know I've heard some public comment and social media and emails that, people are not real happy with that, but personally I am. I think it's a big asset. So I just, I don't have any prepared remarks, but I really see the Albion Headlands growing up here. It's really one of our last great places. It's an incredible place out there, as you've probably seen in some of the marketing materials. It's really, to be able to see a property of that magnitude, that size, that doesn't have any homes on it, that's not built with Airbnb or, bed and breakfast or hotels or anything like that, is really, really spectacular. So when I talk about reimagining the future of the Albion Headlands, I'm trying to say, hey, let's not look so much at the past, though it's super important. Let's look towards the future. As Roxanne talked here, the Smith family has really been trying to sell this property for about 30 years to the state, right? Or to a public trust. That's been what the Smith family has tried to do several times. So that's what has been within their ethos, and that has been their intention. But for whatever reason, and I don't think we need to keep going back and back and back, but for whatever reason, the state has not followed through. The different organizations that have had a chance to come up and do this deal haven't been able to pull it off. So when I talk about reimagining the future, I'm talking about let's collectively find a way to really do this, because if that doesn't happen, and I'm not here to talk about development or buildability or anything like that, that property will be purchased probably by a public entity or a private entity, and they'll build something out there. It will either be a home or something could be built out there. The scope in which that development looks like, I don't know, and I'm not really here to debate that. Or, find some way for hopefully the Mendocino Land Trust here, who I'm a big supporter of, an ally in this process, to find a creative solution forward that the seller, Ms. Smith, can see an offer that she can accept. She has the right to sell the property. I think we would all agree with that. Yeah, but we do need to find some way to bridge sort of the gap and, the history that's happened in the past, so that we can do that here. And I think that's hopefully the intention of the meeting.
Do we have any questions for Justin? Leon?
Here's what they're asking for.
Right about $7 million.
That's for the price.
And the
$7 million.
land trust is interested in it.
Well, they're going to talk about some direct questions at them. Then, anybody else have a question?
Please.
Yeah, I have a question. Have you talked to the owners about putting some of the property in a conservation easement so that they could get a tax advantage out of that, and they could count that money they get from the tax advantage against their capital gains from selling the property?
Please.
Has any water studies been done on the property? Accessibility of water?
So there's a large public record. There are a number of wells that are out there. Yeah. So there's been a lot of money that the Smith family has spent to push the project forward as we've advertised for development. That's correct. Yes.
And what is the current status of access to the coast?
On the property, there'll be multiple access points for the next owner.
No, what do you mean? To the coast, to the water?
Yeah,
What-
yeah, all the way across. I mean, that is a provision within the coastal commission to sail on lots, that there has to be access and made available to the public, and as a protector of the public trust. And I just wonder what the status of that public access is now on that particular piece of property.
There is no public access
There is no
now.
public access
No.
now.
So
Absolutely none.
There is no river or way to get to the water from that cliff, from the
The
cliff.
property's been fenced.
Cliff.
Yeah, it's been fenced for many years. There's no right for anyone to enter on the property or access at the coastline.
So my follow up too, I mean, with all of the iterations of the parcel sizes, what was finally decided upon, and what is the enclosure within those parcels that have landside access?
Yeah, so unless someone tells me differently, I don't think that the parcels have changed since they've been created in 1908. They've always been this size. They've always remained in their current configuration.
That's the smallest the smallest configuration that was ever proposed is the one that's still active, not the 40 acre.
As far as I know, yeah. So just to give you sort of an idea of what it looks like, we'll call it 84 acres. 80 of it is one parcel. The other 4 acres comprises roughly 15 separate parcels. So we have one large 80-acre parcel, plus or minus a little bit of a size difference, but we have one very large parcel that encompasses most of the coastline and has the 2 sort of pronounced knobs that extend out into the water.
And that's the existing approval prior to the coastal commission. That's right.
1908 is my understanding. So those small parcels were actually created for workforce housing.
2008.
No, so pre-subdivision map act. Yeah.
There's a question back there.
I wanted to ask because I think you're bringing up a great question, and I'm confused about this, or I need some clarification. The sign says 16 legal parcels.
Sure.
My understanding is that those are not buildable, and what you just talked about, that 4 acres of 15 or 16 parcels,
Sure.
as you say, they're just small logger lots. And I've spoken with county planning, and they say, well, I think I know this, that they're too small for septic or setbacks in this time frame.
Sure.
And, I drive north every day, and I see the sign at the defunct gas station that says 16 legal parcels. And I feel that sign is misleading because actually the zoning is RMR 40. And I think that what it does is people think, oh my gosh, there's all these parcels out there. But really, they're not buildable parcels. And we have certificates of compliance all throughout the county. I mean, they're everywhere. They're across the street by the store. They're everywhere. And maybe they've been researched, but they're not legally buildable. And so the sign is misleading in it. I think it would be more accurate for that sign to take that out so that it actually talks about what is currently available for sale. The 16, it's just we already went down that road, just as Roxanne said. We spent 25 years discussing certificates of compliance and boundary line adjustments. The board of supervisors made that decision. I don't think any buyer, these guys, or a private entity wants to walk down that road again. So
It's like,
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really not here to discuss buildability. I'm not a building planner, a botanist, or anything like that. So that's not really my role. They are legal parcels. They've been recognized by the county. Title company sees them that way. The question of buildability could be answered and discussed at a later time, but that's not really my role. Please.
Whose property next to it? The old gas station and grocery store.
I personally don't know the current gentleman, but I think that property is going to be also being sold.
Also what?
It also is going to also be sold. I've heard rumor that it's in contract. Where the gas station is?
That's one piece of that part of the parcel.
Where the old gas station is not part of the Albion Headlands. Yeah.
So you don't know who owns it?
I don't personally know them, no.
Because I mean, for one thing, I know they have some kind of water rights.
Yeah, they do. There's an easement that goes out there.
And because I remember they used to even one guy had like washing machines on there for a while. And then okay, so
Sure. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Right.
I do need to move us on. We do have a busy agenda. We can come back.
Thank you.
There'll be more time to discuss later, but I want to pass it on to the land trust now. Let's start with Conrad Kramer.
Hello, I'm Conrad Kramer, the Executive Director of the Mendocino Land Trust. That's loud. I have been here about 5 years. I live in Albion, up on M Road. The Mendocino Land Trust has been around for almost 50 years, and we've been slowly protecting land all over the county with conservation easements and acquiring public access properties. And at this moment, we're at a moment of particular momentum, and we've got a lot of projects going, including two in Albion. We're working on the trail easement that will go from the what used to be the Albion River Inn, now the Mendocino Coast Lodge, out to the bluff where that mansion is, and we're trying to acquire the Albion Headlands, and just a little bit south, we're working with partners to acquire the Christopherson Ranch. So I have a lot going on. We're feeling very motivated about acquiring the Albion Headlands. We thank Justin for giving us a heads up before it actually went to market, and we got a little bit of a jump on it. We made an offer right away. It was a weak offer because there's so much that we didn't know. We've recently made a little bit of a stronger offer, but it's still pretty weak. And we're trying to get a few things sorted out before we try again. Anyway, so the Mendocino Land Trust, we're almost at our 50th year. We think we might actually get to 50,000 acres protected across the county in that time. With 20 public access sites, 20 miles of trail. And but I wanted to introduce Emily Griffin. She's our Director of Land Protection at the Mendocino Land Trust. She has been assigned this project, and now it's the only thing she's doing. She can tell you some of the details, and then together we can try to answer some of your questions. So off to Emily.
Thanks, Conrad. My name's Emily Griffin. I grew up here. I graduated from Mendocino High School in 1992. And moved back in 2011 with my wife and my son. We live up Combs-Ukiah Road. I'm one of 3 Mendocino Land Trust staffers who graduated from Mendo High. So, it's not only been around for 50 years. There's only about 8 or 9 of us. Most of us are local, and really, protecting this coast and this county is, in our bones and our blood. So I feel really privileged and honored to be a part of it and be doing this work and be here and back home, doing this work in this place that I grew up and love. So, this is such an exciting opportunity. And I appreciate Justin for bringing it to us, and he's been a big supporter of ours, and I appreciate that. So I'm hoping that we can work collaboratively to figure out a way to make it happen. Because as Conrad was saying, this is the primary thing I've been working on for the past couple of months. One of the other things we've been working on a lot lately is an acquisition up by Westport of 157 acres of coastal property. And that's what I think one of the first times that the Land Trust has been able to actually go out and purchase a property that was listed on the public market when we'll get there. And I think that was, as Conrad mentioned, we've already made a couple of offers that have been kind of weak, and they've been weak because they've had long periods of time for the escrow to close with contingencies built in for what the eventual purchase price will be based on what the property actually appraises at. And contingencies for us even being able to raise the grant funding and other funding to actually reach that point where we can actually pay the money to the seller and close on it. It was structured that way because that was the only way we could structure it this early, and with the resources we have right now. So we're hopeful that we can find other avenues that might work better and put together a stronger offer that might be something the seller's interested in. Obviously, like you can imagine any landowner, I assume the seller wants more certainty and wants it done faster than what we've been able to offer so far. So that's what we're working on. I can't tell you everything we're doing that we're working on. Negotiating a large land purchase is a tricky transaction, and we are doing our best to work with Justin and trying to work through that and find a way forward. We are talking to lots and lots of organizations and people, from local private folks who might be able to help in some way to large state agencies like the California Coastal Conservancy, who has supported us in the past, like with the Bell Point purchase we're doing right now in Westport. They've been supportive of a lot of the projects we've done up and down the coast, both public access projects and actual land acquisition projects. For those of you who know, what we're envisioning with this, it's very similar to Navarro Point. You've got an example right there. And that's a property, 77 acres, I believe, that we own. We've owned for many years. We built the trails on it. We maintain the parking lot and the trails. We have wonderful volunteers like Tom, who organize volunteer days to do invasive, thistle removal, and we have wonderful stewardship staff in Nikki and Chase and Anna who go out and rebuild boardwalks and keep the trails clear and the signs in order and all those things to make it a wonderful public access site. So we are very proud of all of the public access sites we have up and down the coast. Anytime you see that nice dark red MLT, we're very branded, Conrad and I. Anytime you see that dark red, that's MLT, those are our trails that we either maintain. When they're privately owned, we still have public access easements across privately owned property, like the one that we're developing on the property just north of the old Albion River Inn. And then we have properties we actually own up and down the coast. So that's our hope. Again, I wish I could tell you everything we're doing. Some of that, we're still working on. It's very early times, but I guarantee you I've talked just today to, I think, 5 different people and organizations about this property. Justin gave me the 1,000-page planning file, and I have gotten through the first 300 pages of it. I am really working on it. I'm learning more and more about the property all the time. A lot of you, thank you, Allison, thank you, Roxanne, thank you. A lot of you have come and given me a lot of great information on Marie, a lot of folks, about the history of the property that I didn't know, and that helped me go in the right direction to learn a lot, because the more we learn, the better offer we can put together. So we are very, very hopeful this will happen and move forward. We'd be happy to answer any questions. And I view this more as a sort of us learning from you guys, the community, and trying to brainstorm as many different ways we can make this work as possible. Thanks.
I can pre-answer a question. How can you help? And if you weren't going to ask it, I was going to tell you. Anyway, so how can you help? Well, there's 2 levels of help that we need. One is that Emily's spending all of her time on this, and we don't have a grant source or a funder that's covering her time. So for people that are looking at smaller donations, like $50 or $100, a bunch of them could really help. Purchase the time for Emily to keep cranking on this project. So we really appreciate that. The other thing we need is a little more skin in the game with this seller. I mean, we put up $20,000, but we need to put up quite a bit more before we think the seller would be actually interested in giving us the time we need. And so we're looking at maybe as much as $200,000. So for the bigger donors in the room, if someone came forward with $100,000 or $200,000, it'd be a whole new ballgame. We might actually be able to get this. We have no doubt that we can raise the money in a year or two. But we need the seller to give us the time, which means we need more skin in the game.
You've partnered, of course, with a lot of government agencies. What about getting some government money into this? Isn't that possible? You guys are purchased up by the COMG and all that?
Absolutely. Government money would cover the bulk of this, no matter which way we do it. So,
What's the offer price?
they asked for basically $7 million. We offered $7 million with the contingency that an appraiser would have to support that price, because as a nonprofit, we can't pay more than the appraised value. And the state agencies that we would get funding from have similar constraints.
Is there a plan to get an appraisal?
There is, yes, we are working on it. We are working on it. We hope to start the appraisal shortly.
I'm gonna comment on that. Thank you. As I think a lot of you know, I'm Jim Hyde. I'm a member of the Albion Bridge Stewards, the organization working to preserve the historic Albion River Bridge. And first of all, I want to thank everyone who's participating in this, including and maybe especially Justin, because you're in that kind of semi-uncomfortable middle ground of you're representing a seller who has every legal right to sell the property, but I also can tend to sense your empathy toward that spectacular parcel and the need to preserve it. So it's really wonderful that everyone here is kind of on the same side. And the point that I want to address as a member of Albion Bridge Stewards is the proximity of this spectacular parcel to that spectacular bridge. One of the kind of things I've always said that works against the Albion River Bridge is that you can't see it when you're going over it. You can't see it, a tourist can't see it. You can't appreciate how spectacular it's built and engineered unless you go down to the flats, which very few people do. But imagine, I have a dream, if you'll let me coin a phrase, of that parcel, the Albion Headlands, being under the stewardship of the Mendocino Land Trust with a new cantilevered, historically accurate bike and pedestrian path. An architect in our community has designed it. Professional engineers have signed off on the fact that, yep, it could be done, leading to that new proposed trail on the north side of the Albion River Bridge. There'd be nothing like it in the world. A trail that leads from one spectacular headland to another, crossing over the last remaining timber trestle bridge on Highway 1 in California. It would be spectacular. My fear, as I think about how the headlands might be saved, is that Caltrans might get involved. Caltrans has a four-syllable word they use called mitigation, where they buy one thing in exchange for allowing people to destroy something someplace else. Right. And my great fear is that Caltrans would be involved in a purchase of part or all of the headlands as mitigation for destruction of the historic bridge. If I had to decide which side they came down on that, it would be not an easy, no-brainer decision for me to make, quite frankly. So I guess my bottom line plea to Mendocino Land Trust is to find a way to secure the funds that don't involve Caltrans saying, yeah, we'll help, but that bridge has got to go. That is, to me, not the way to go to preserve that spectacular parcel.
Thank you.
Hold on. I have got this. I'm trying to pass this to someone.
Thank you. Right.
I want to present this photo that local photographer Rita Crane took to you guys, the Mendocino Land Trust, not to coerce you to follow through and do the impossible, but Rita could not attend herself, and she wants for you to have this spectacular photo of a spectacular view.
Thank you.
And I hope we can preserve this for future generations. So she's thanking you for your dedication to saving and protecting open land for public access. We appreciate you. Here's another photo of how beautiful this place is. And when the Board of Supervisors saw that, they clearly knew this couldn't be parceled out into little teeny wincy parcels, that this needed to be protected. And in addition, the SB 497 which was passed September 4th, 2001, clearly makes it clear that parcels need to be truly adjoining, meaning physically contiguous. And this bill, SB 497, allows local governments to review and approve or deny lot line adjustments for exempt parcels based on conformity with the local general plan and any applicable coastal plan. And if you want to know more about this, it's handouts here. Help yourself, and if you need more, we'll give you more. There's also a link to an article that was written by Connie Corbell in the Mendocino Beacon, and here's the link if you don't want to take the article that clearly described what Rick Sand was talking about.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the Mendocino Land Trust. I wanted to get a clarity on the appraisal. I know there has to be an appraisal and it has to be by a certified appraiser. But you mentioned that my question is, I know the state can't pay more than the appraisal, but can the state put in money and the Mendocino Land Trust add on to that to bring it up to selling buyers?
I'm going to let the lawyer answer that.
No. If we rely on state grant funding, the amount that we pay the seller for the property cannot exceed the appraised value. Even if, say, we get a grant from the State Coastal Conservancy for half of the appraised value, we still can't pay more than the appraised value. We could go up to appraised value with private fundraising or other financing, but we could never pay a cent over the appraised value if state funding is involved. They won't use state funds toward a transaction they would view as wasting state money.
They wouldn't give you that 50%.
They wouldn't even give us the 50%. Yeah. So it's one of those pieces of the nonprofit and public funding model that is a tricky obstacle that we face. Yeah.
And I've got a question that I think is about 15 or 20 years ago that the Big River property, the Hall Road, all that came up for sale, and Mendocino Land Trust made a huge campaign to raise over $20 million to buy that. And just want to hear from you if there's going to be a repeat of that or how that model worked.
Yeah, absolutely. The Big River campaign raised $26 million. And the key point is that they were able to work it out with the sellers so that they had time to run the campaign and time to seek the public funding. And they found 3 or 4 donors that started off the campaign with like $6 million in private donations. Can we do all? We can do all these same things with Big River or with Albion Headlands if we can work it out with the sellers to give us the time. And I understand the sellers are kind of tired of this whole process. They've been down this road maybe 2 times before, but that's where we need to get to. And once we get to that point, we can get an offer accepted, and we can agree on the appraised value. And we can give ourselves some time that, yes, we will go to the state agencies and seek funding and launch a public campaign, just like Big River. Now it'll be a little different. Big River donations poured in from 13 or 18 different nations. This was a Save the Old Growth Redwood project, in addition to the incredible habitat of the estuary and incredible public access opportunities. So it was just huge. Albion Headlands may have a little more of a not so wide of a regional appeal, but it's made it spectacular, and we have no doubt we can raise the money if we have the time.
The Big River purchase, Dan Hamburg was a congressman at the time, and also his assistant Kate Anderton. Do you have similar support here from congressional push behind it for public land?
We haven't talked to our congressional representatives about this project yet because it's just so new. And if we can't get the time, then the project will, it'll be dead. We need some time. If we get some time, then we can pull all that support together.
Do you have the contact list for the group from all over the world that help you with the big turnaround?
We do know who those donors are. We have a lot of donors in our database that have not made a donation in 20 years because they donated to Big River and not since. But if we go back to them with a great project, and if they're still alive, then I think they'll support us again.
So I've heard you say several times that in order to pull this off, we really need time. We need the time from the seller. And I've also several times now heard you say that the seller is really tired of this process. Is it realistic to think that maybe we can negotiate that and get the time?
Is that a question to Justin? Or?
I'll take it. I won't make Justin answer it.
Realistic possibility?
I think this is one of those things we're working really hard on right now, and we can't really tell you a whole lot of details of how we're trying to get there, but we're working hard to find a more creative solution to try to get there and to make a better, stronger offer to the seller.
In your words of starting, is there some way that we can help you get that time? Is there something we can participate in at this point that may be helpful?
We will accept donations to the Mendocino Land Trust that are restricted to the Albion Headlands project that could support our time working on the project. It could support the actual appraisal costs. It could support all of those things, potentially a deposit if we need to make a deposit. We don't know yet exactly what it's going to look like, but we do know the first steps are us working on it, us getting an appraisal. Those are sort of the steps right in front of us.
We could all start making really nice brownies and potluck items and taking them to the owners to butter them up. As a start. We got brownies. Thank you.
Can I ask, has there been any private buyers interested since it's gone on the market? Is there anyone privately trying to buy it yet?
There are several private developers that are currently sort of in background due diligence right now, looking at the property and what could be the highest and best sort of maximum development there. It is zoned residential, so the likelihood of any type of hospitality or commercial use there is I just don't see that. A hotel or something like that, but there are a number of developers looking at the property, yes.
A follow-up to her question about, you referred to the money, that's of course welcome. We have a very community that does mobilize for things. What specifically, besides money, what could we do to help move this forward as this community?
I have no background in advocacy, and so I wouldn't. I guess I wouldn't know, and it's not my place to recommend strategy. We're working as hard as we can, and we are pulling all the levers that we have access to, and that's the work that we do.
I suppose the one thing at this point would be maybe a community letter to the State Coastal Conservancy, making clear to them how important it is to this community and to public access here on the coast. Those are their values as well, and they have voiced an initial interest in the property, but how deep that interest is, and what I mean by that is how much money they will give us to help us buy it, might be swayed by public opinion.
So that Coastal Conservancy is the number one agency that you with there?
Yes.
Yeah, they're $7 million is pretty big, even for the State Coastal Conservancy. They gave us $2 million for Bell Point. We were very up in Westport. We were very happy to get it, but $7 million is a pretty big ticket item for them. After all, they're doing projects all over the coast.
I'm mostly thinking of people-based things, local people, and the first thing that came to my mind was when we missed Memorial Day weekend. And a lot of events often are certainly well attended, but not, proponents of cause aren't often visible. And I'm thinking of the 4th of July parade for one. I'm thinking of Fort Bragg's Paul Bunyan days. I'm thinking of other planned things like that, where people with the funds who might be visiting, not necessarily with all the funding but money to spare, would be, it's a good place to spark interest, I would think. And so that I went to just the nearest next, and postering those of us who, myself excluded, but who have a lot of tech skills and or like Rita's wonderful use of photography, those kinds of things, to start publicizing. So because I think money follows awareness and caring, and if there's voice, and a lot of also I would speak to other communities here, not just those that live in Albion and or Mendocino, but perhaps Fort Bragg, who might even speak other languages, quite frankly, who love coming south, who love being in Mendo, and certainly would enjoy perhaps knowing of this, and their voices also could be included and or put in some way. So that.
Yeah. Okay.
Great idea.
Yes. I wondered, sometimes with a project, it's for me anyway, it's easier to break it down into different segments. So you've said donate money. So what about if you're like, okay, we need $8,000 for the appraisal. That we have to start with the appraisal. So let's have a campaign to get that $8,000, and then you can at least get the appraisal, and we could see where we stand. If we could break it into sections, it could roll out.
Do you have a guesstimate of what the appraisal would cost, and any plan for that source of that money?
What do you think?
I'm probably between $10,000 and $15,000, and we might have half of it covered by the Coastal Conservancy if they're willing to cover half. It's something I'm working on.
Do we know how they came up with the sum of $6,999,000? Did they have it appraised? Where did they come up with that? Shouldn't there be an appraisal somewhere on file?
I don't have an appraisal on the property.
The realtor doesn't have an appraisal on the property?
I'm not.
Well, do they have an appraisal on the property?
Not anything recent that I know
So
of.
they just kind of grab this figure out of the air and said this is what we're charging for?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's a little more fact-based or market data approach. So, she had Miss Smith had the property publicly listed in 2017, which is kind of I'm surprised to hear that nobody knew about that. Part of the reason maybe nobody knew is because it was listed with an out-of-area real estate agent and brokerage. So again, good to go local. But yeah, she had it listed in 2017 for, I think it was $8 million at the time. There wasn't, I don't know of any town hall meetings or anything that happened. It must have just kind of flew under the radar. But like I said, they've been actively trying to sell the property for over 30 years. Please.
So you can possibly get 2 40-acre parcels there to build 2 single-family residences, and you're selling the property for $7 million. That means each undeveloped parcel is worth $3.5 million. So that, to me, sounds like an awful lot of money, regardless of where it is, for a lot for a single-family residence. I mean, maybe $2 million in a spectacular place like that, but $3.5 million for that seems like a lot. So nobody knows for sure. But let's say that you get an appraisal, and the appraisal comes in for $5.5 million. So do you think the owners would accept that appraised value and say, well, we're gonna take less than we were hoping for our whole lives because that's what the appraised value is? Or do you think if they got an appraised value that low, they'd say, well, we're gonna test the market anyway because we think that's way lowball compared to what we think it's worth?
Yeah, I really don't want to kind of speculate on what a seller might accept. That seems a little premature on that right now, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but I just not something that it's really, the seller can choose to accept whatever figure that they want. They can ask whatever they want for a property. I mean, looking at what we're talking about here is a forever protection on one of California's most spectacular oceanfront properties. I think we really need to be focusing on, hey, let's do what we have to do to get it, right? I mean, that's really the focus, is not sort of, well, I think that's the important thing.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
If the land trust is limited to only paying what the appraised value is, then, you know, if the appraised value comes in a lot lower, that might scotch the whole deal, because if the owners won't accept the appraised value, then the whole thing goes
Yeah, very well could, and that's a lot of the sort of discussions that we're having, sort of, to be frank, behind closed doors. But that is a valid point. I'm not disagreeing with you, and those are one of the hurdles that we're really trying to figure out. How do we negotiate through and figure out? Yeah, absolutely.
And on the other hand, if the appraisal comes in really high, we might not be able to raise that money. It might be beyond our ability to raise, right?
You have to pay the actual appraisal price, even if it's high?
No, we don't.
I mean, and that's one of the key questions. You know, it's the we could put a lot of money into this, and you know, the appraisal will come in, and we may not have a deal. And so that's one of the questions we have to answer: is how much of our donor-supported funds are we willing to put at risk, and what level of risk? At what point is it just too risky and we're wasting our donors' money, right? What's the right level of risk for this great opportunity? You know, and that would be really great if we had some people walk in with some really big checkbooks, and we're love risk. You know, they just love to put their money in risk, and then we'd all be very happy. But we're still waiting for that.
How many parcels, I didn't count them, how many parcels on the map that somebody had?
16.
So, $7 million. I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, theoretically, say it could be one parcel and still make a lot of money, right? You could put a castle on there, you know. There are places around here like that are 25 million ducks pieces, you know.
Sure.
And it'd be only one parcel.
Yeah, I mean, a private individual could come in and say, I'll take all 16 parcels and I'm just going to build one house, and I'm going to keep this thing gated and fenced off and just have one house out there, and that's just their private castle.
I mean, there are pieces like that around.
Absolutely, yeah. So in that scenario, really, there's no change, right? The Albion Headlands is still blocked off from public use, from public access. It's just in the hands of a private individual.
But right now it's divided into two still?
It's not been divided. The sellers have never divided it.
Well, no, but all right, they're allowed to have two parcels?
Well, they have 16 parcels. In terms of...
That's allowed? They have approval for 16 parcels?
Correct. That's done. It's been that way since 1908 or so.
That's not to say that they're building.
You've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, your estimation on the cost of the appraisal, does that include environmental review?
That
would
would
go
be
into
part
the
of
development,
our
yeah.
due diligence if we were to get in, if we had a purchase contract in place.
Okay.
Can I just do a quick what if follow-up? What if the appraisal comes in at 8 million? No, sorry, the other way, 6 million. And the land trust can raise that, right? We raise that, but the owners want 7.5. Is there a potential for a partnership for private donors to come in with the land trust? Okay. No. I didn't think so, but I just wanted to. Yeah. So it couldn't be a donation to the land trust for management purposes to save the.
No, those darn auditors.
Yeah, right?
Just
Just hold on.
Right.
I mean, I've covered Nature Conservancy and Trust for Public Lands doing exactly that 100 times in my life. How can it not be possible here?
Because as a nonprofit, we're not allowed to give a private benefit to an individual, right? Because we are here for the public good. And so if we give Carol Smith, the owner, more than what the property is worth, we are giving her as an individual a private benefit from publicly raised funds.
From the public part.
From the nonprofit.
But the Nature Conservancy will partner with somebody.
I think that's after they buy it.
You can take all of your people and raise all the money and you can buy it and then donate it to us, right? We can't do the purchase. Somebody else could raise however much they want, buy it and hand it to us. However much Carol wants, I should say.
I mean, the Nature Conservancy has some massive donors that may do exactly that. Buy it for them and then give it to them. Right? And we love that option.
So that we will say yes. If anyone wants to buy the property and donate it to us, we will accept
Sure.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will accept it.
I don't, but.
Melissa?
Just to get back to the appraisal, so you said that perhaps you have half of it, half of $15,000. So would it be helpful to move the project forward for us to try to raise, $8,000 so that you guys can do an appraisal?
That would be helpful. Certainly would be helpful. I mean,
Okay.
if we see an opportunity to buy this property, we're gonna spend that money, and it'd be wonderful if it were donor supported. Otherwise, it'll come out of our bank account. That's not the piece I'm worried about. The piece I'm worried about is the earnest money, which might be 3% of the purchase price, and then of course I'm worried about the purchase price. So I'm not that worried about the appraisal.
Yeah, let me just say really quickly too, the land trust has been full speed, 100 miles an hour on this project since the day we brought it to them, right? And the day we brought it to them was well before a public offering, well before that setting. So these guys are really kicking butt in terms of what they have to do to get there. There's a lot of complexities here. There's a lot of history here. There's a lot of things, but I've been super proud at what they've done. And I just think we got to keep supporting them and know that they're doing everything that they can.
The impression I'm getting is that we're somewhat at the mercy of the seller and the owner now, and that I'm getting the impression that there's been some willingness to work in the past to see maybe they believe that they have an intention that this would be nice if it were protected land, but they're getting tired of it. And it almost sounds like maybe the best thing is for us to support your efforts to try to do something in the short term to convince them that this is something that they should be willing to allow us to have time to work on. But it also sounds like possibly they're getting tired of this and saying we don't want to do this anymore. I'm just wondering how we can. It almost seems premature for us to be trying to make plans if you're in negotiation with that one fact. Are they willing to work to see this intention that we all have, this goal, come to pass, or are they saying we just want money? Because both of those things can be true.
But my impression is that if we make a good offer with offering 3% of earnest money, over the course of various stages, so that's the inspection, the appraisal, they might say yes. They also may not. So I've got a might at this point. The other thing we can maybe do is find a bridge owner, bridge buyer, just like we were talking about, someone that can just buy it and give it to us, or buy it and hold it for us while we raise money. And there are a few of them around. We're of course talking to them, so that's another possibility. And so that's also a maybe.
Thank you for your efforts, and I think I support that what you're doing, and that we need to support and fund what you're doing, or approve that these funds are best spent in your negotiations right now.
Jim. Yeah, this one's for Justin, and it again relates to Caltrans. Can I tell who's on my mind a lot these days? And that is Caltrans plans for the replacing the Albion River Bridge, which of course is not going to happen, involve 5 to 6 years of construction and a new alignment that would be, a new bridge would be west of the existing bridge, which would require the taking of some land on the headlands, and probably some of this endangered pygmy cypress as well. My question is, given that we know what Caltrans is planning, are you as the agent disclosing that to potential private sellers, private buyers, as a possibility that might occur with the property that they might want for their castle?
Yeah, of course.
Good.
Any other questions? Leon?
It's not a question, it's a clarification. The conservation easement, the tax advantages of that, is that something that might help the buyer figure his position out? I don't know. Who was it that mentioned that? Was that Bob?
I can take that one. I do conservation easements. It's probably not a good solution where a seller wants to sell their property. A conservation easement is, on a large property like that, is relatively expensive to set up in the first instance. So, and you do receive a generous tax donation for doing so, but what a conservation easement does, because it limits what you can do on the property, it puts restrictions on development on the property, it reduces the property's value. So if you want to sell the property and you want top dollar for it, which is what we understand this seller wants, you're not going to do something to the property to reduce its value.
Anything else anyone want to say, or should we wrap up the meeting?
What's the next step? Yeah.
That's a great question. What's the next step? Does anybody feel like following it up with another meeting in a month or something like that? Anyone want to take on that task, or any group of people?
How about a float in the 4th of July parade? For the Albion Conservancy, to save us. Save this.
That's one idea.
I mean, what the next step? And she mentioned the 4th of July as a very viable place for tourists and locals and people of other languages here to see and view things about what we're about.
Save the Albion Headlands, right? Carrie?
So in relationship to that, I think I like the spirit of it, but I think more effective is people handing out flyers or talking to people individually or having a table or something where you're actually communicating, not necessarily floats. But, I mean, I've done floats and blah, 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 but I think to go to people who are visitors, I mean, you have to give them time to speak, not just be putting our ideas forward.
Justin, I hate to put you on the spot, but I want to do everything that's going to, I want to do everything that is going to make the seller most likely to want to work with us, and so I don't want to alienate her, and I'm wondering if there's anything that the community would do that would be, not received well by the seller, and therefore make it harder for us to work with her.
Yeah.
And to be clear, the Minnesota Land Trust is not the same as the Albion community, and you're welcome to do whatever you want, and we'll keep pursuing our mission no matter what. But I just want to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction.
Sure, yeah. So I realize that this is a spirited group, a lot to say, but let's all remember that in the current days of social media that, sellers are also there reading all of the public comments and reading the things that people are saying and even reading the anonymous comments that we get. So I think it's better to stay positive than to be focusing on some of the negative stuff that's come out that I would never imagine anybody in this room would say anything negative. But there are some people that have taken to the internet in a kind of a trolling capacity that I just don't think is positive, and that stuff's public. The seller can read it. There's already been a long history here, so let's try to stay positive. Keep it to the facts, but a good, I think, positive message coming from the Albion community is really going to be the best thing moving forward.
Thank you. I still want to add a little something more to what Melissa already mentioned earlier. To have this zoned as 16 parcels allows speculators to avoid not only the MAP Act, but also infrastructure, general plan, specific plan, local coastal plan, and the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, requirements that would otherwise apply. And speculators have been exploiting this loophole in the MAP Act to drive up the cost of property and avoid the planning and infrastructure requirements that all other developers must deal with. So I think we need to keep that in our mind, that it is still zoned, as far as I understand, RWR 40, Melissa, right?
I think it should be RMS.
RMR, sorry. Yeah,
Sure.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom?
Yes, one last question. Okay.
Is there a reason why the owners didn't put a house on the property before, in the last 30 years? Is there, have you talked about that?
I can't really speak to that. No, I'm not really sure. I mean, I think it was in 1996 they made an attempt to sell it to the state. You know, the state offered $5.3 million to purchase it in 96. I don't really know. I can't speak to why they didn't develop it. I really don't know.
Right.
I just wanted to add one thing. Everybody should watch Justin's video if you want to see what the thing is worth. If you want to see, why you would want to give money to that. I've taken pictures of that for years and don't do justice to beginning. But man, look at that video.
A little bit on that state money. That was when we tried to create an Albion State Park to be the Polly Anderson Ranch across from the grocery store. That 40 acres, including Middle Ridge and the Albion Headland, was all going to be one piece and one state park. And Trust for Public Land helped, I think, the Land Trust. And the State Assembly did pass $6.5 million to go towards that. But we had a Republican governor, Duke Majan, who vetoed that fund when he was able to go through the budget and get rid of things. So we came that close, and we're close again. We're going to keep working on this one with good partners like Justin and the Land Trust. And people sign their name in emails. We will send out a report on this meeting with the links to the videos, and we'll, if we could have any follow-up action, follow-up new news, we'll get that to you if you signed on the sign-up sheet.
I just have one comment to make about the Stellar. And back when we had the fires in Albion and they burned up Navarro Ridge Road and we were all worried about evacuations and everything, I actually had direct contact with Carol Smith, and she was very open to allowing anyone with animals to evacuate onto her property. She was very open to that and very supportive about helping anybody in Albion that needed to get large animals off the ridge. She opened her property up in that event. So it says something about who she is, because I didn't know her at all, and there was a lot of emails going back and forth, and she was very open to that. So we're not dealing with someone who has no heart or any interest in what's going on in Albion. She was
Great.
very helpful.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's a hand back here.
Just a quick follow-up comment. You were very nice, Justin, in calling out our fine folks at the trust fund and the wonderful work you're doing with it. Thank you. I'd like to say that we thank you as well, because you don't have to be here, but you are, and that speaks a whole lot to who you are and I think our community.
So I also want to thank Roxanne and Conrad and Emily and all of you for coming. And we got out of here in less than an hour and a half. So keep those meetings tight.